Poop shoot, what is up? Back with 5 more things. This was my grade 10 football jersey. Way better number. And although I was kept on defense, I got to play middle linebacker. Or was I outside? Maybe I was outside. But way better than quarterback. I enjoyed it so much more and played maybe half of the season as opposed to very little in grade 9. So yeah, very similar jerseys. I think it's still got the same Oaks thing on the side. Everything looks kind of similar, just different number. Better number. Anyways, that's the story of this jersey. Now, the 5 things I got up to, we got a little bit of variation in this round. First up, we will start with the lone book completion of this sesh, and it is Aliens Bug Hunt. This tome was released in 2017 and contains 18 kind of short stories from various authors. Some of them I've heard from. I've heard of, like, oh shit, where was? Actually, there's actually more I haven't heard of by far than that I have. But Tim Lebbon, he did. James A. Moore, they did a couple of the stories. Tim Lebbon, I know because he's done Star Wars books in the past. So a lot of these, I was gonna say a lot. Some of these names I've heard, but yeah, I'm not sure if they're all sci-fi authors or just going outside their genre. But anyways, all different authors contributed to these 18 stories, and they all mostly take. Actually, I think all the stories involve the Colonial Marines and their various encounters across the universe with not only just the xenomorphs but other weird things they run into. There's one where, like, the facehuggers have infected, like, these huge centipede bugs, so you have like a xenomorph centipede that has like 100 legs. I didn't think they could get any more terrifying. That would be more terrifying. Fucking awful. Anyways, also some like small flying creatures. There's one story where they're like, basically it's almost like these flying creatures are filled with propane, so as soon as you shoot them they like fucking explode. Other ones are like these little small flying creatures, and they basically can breathe fire and burn you to a cinder. There was one that was almost like it was a mechanical attack, and this thing was like dissolving the ship around it to heal itself. I don't know if it was infected by an alien, some sort of machine. Doesn't make sense to me, but something was going on wrong with this machine, and the Marines barely escaped. Well, some of them didn't, with their lives. What else was there? There was some stories, cool stories that involve some characters from the Aliens films. There's a story about Bishop, how he kind of first came off the line and his programming didn't quite take the way all the other synthetics did, and he was able to kind of think outside of his programming and that sort of thing. He wasn't necessarily as constrained by his programming as the other models were. And it was funny, as he was coming off the line and he was talking to the other synthetics that came before him, they were all named after chess pieces, so that's why he's Bishop. And I think there was a rook and a knight, maybe, I can't remember, but I thought that was kind of a little interesting little tidbit. And then it goes on to like one of his first adventures with the Marines and kind of how he contributed to that. There's one where Hicks, it's like a far prequel to the Aliens movies, where like Hicks's wife, who's also a Colonial Marine, gets sent on this mission to this world, and they keep in regular contact. And the last thing she sends him, she's like being like, oh my god, there's things here, blah blah, and then she gets attacked by an alien. He doesn't know if she's dead or not, but he assumes she is. And for however many years he lives in this kind of tormented state where he doesn't know what happened to his wife. And by some sort of error, he is later on posted to this planet on a mission with his squad of Marines, and he doesn't say anything because he knows if they know he has a vested interest in going to this planet, they'll take him off the mission. So he goes and discovers his wife's remains and gets a bit of closure on that sort of thing, and has like his first encounter with the Xenos, setting up obviously for the Aliens movies. There was one where long after Alien 3 happened on the Fury planet, where all the inmates were running that kind of facility, that mining facility, where Ripley made her last stand after she was impregnated by the alien. Years afterwards, after the planet's gone dark sort of thing, it's suddenly showing signs of life. So group of Marines are tasked with going there and checking out what the hell's going on. And they get there and investigate things and see all the people that were there trying to do whatever they were doing got shredded by aliens, and they're like, let's get the fuck out of here, right? So they take off. And there's another one. Oh shit, it slipped my mind now. Oh crap, it was a good one. One of the most interesting ones was, it was actually from the perspective of the alien. So it was like an alien hive had come into contact with colonial Marines, and were all the aliens but one was eliminated. So it came to this decision where the alien was like, do I fall back and warn the rest of the hive of these things, or do I try and keep the hive going? And there's one colonial Marine left and it's injured. It's like, do I try and attack it and subdue it and bring it back to impregnate and whatever, expand the hive versus protect the hive, sort of thing. So it has all these weird thoughts and whatever, and goes back and talks to or basically communes with the queen who is dying. So during this whole adventure, you kind of, it describes how when the aliens hiss and stuff like that, it's their form of using echolocation to see what other beings are kind of in the vicinity with them, and how sometimes they touch their heads to the walls and they can sense vibrations and whatever, and how their heads are made of all these folds that can utilize air and stuff. It was really neat. It was a neat perspective, because they're so mysterious, these creatures, right? So it's neat to see kind of from their perspective. And then we see the birth of a new queen to replace the old one, and the queens actually have a little more sentience to them and actually communicate with each other, whereas all the ones below them are all more of a hive mind sort of thing. And then there was one other one, other than the one I forgot, that was kind of interesting. Oh, it was a documentary on the history of the M41A pulse rifle, the gun that we see the Marines use in all the Aliens movies, and how that gun came to being the foremost kind of weapon the colonial Marines use, which was kind of an interesting. There was lots of different kind of takes and different avenues they went with all these different stories. It was a really good read. I like it. I like it when you have a book of short stories. Sometimes they can be misses, but most of the time I find the short stories kind of keep your interest more in some ways, and when they're written as well as these ones are, doubly so. Next up, the second DVD volume of The Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This one, the first volume, simply called Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, had 7 episodes. This one only has 6, and they're kind of all over the place. And I think last time, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but some of the episodes are like full-length episodes, and other ones are like half episodes. So I think when they aired, it was either one full episode or 2 shorter ones back to back. So I'm basically using them as like episode 1, 2, 3, whatever. It doesn't matter how long they are. It's not like 2A and 2B for me. It's 1, 2, 3, whatever. So on that first disc, like these are really random releases. On that first disc that had 7 episodes, it was episodes, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11. And then on this one, it's even more random. It starts with episode like 23, then goes to 6, 12, 14, 17, 18. So they're all randomly scattered. They're not in the order. Now, I'm not sure it really matters with this cartoon as to the order, because I don't sense any overarching kind of storyline connecting them all. They're kind of random one-off episodes, which is kind of disappointing, but if they're just going to release them like this, kind of goofy random, I guess so be it, right? Maybe that's a good thing for this. But I've read online that these are the only 2 DVD releases for this cartoon, and this one was from 2020. So I guess they didn't sell that well, and they're not going to be doing anymore. So these 13 episodes are all I'm going to have of this cartoon. But some's better than none, I guess. Of these 6 episodes, there was 3 that really stood out to me. Which ones are they? Repo Mantis was the second one on the disc. The Turtles, I think they're getting scrap at a junkyard or something like that one night, when they run into the guy that runs the junkyard, and he's a mutant himself. He's a praying mantis, And that's the thing about this cartoon is they run into a lot more mutants along the way. Like it's almost like there's mutants everywhere in hiding in New York, whereas like in the original Turtles cartoon, right, there were very few other mutants. There were other ones that entered the fray, especially more as the cartoon ran along, but like in this one, it's like they're almost everywhere, right? So, anyways, in this, like, Repo Mantis brings in this excuse me, almost like a space looking moon buggy type vehicle that's going to be scrapped. It was used in some sort of the Turtles' favorite movie or something like that, and they're like, oh my god, we want this, we can't pay you though, blah blah blah. And Repo Mantis is like, wow, you do some jobs for me, you can have it. But turns out this guy's not quite legit, and he gets the Turtles doing evil stuff, so then they have to be like, what are we doing? Like, this is stupid, we're being the bad guys now just to get this moon buggy. So then they have to find a way out of that situation, right? The other two were, oh god, where is it? Oh, Bug Busters, which was the one right after. It was almost like a parody of Ghostbusters. There was a hotel having an infestation of like these mosquito type mutants that as soon as they bite a human, they would turn into a raving mutant lunatic sort of thing. So the Turtles were called in to squash this outbreak, and of course they come in like the four Ghostbusters and cause all sorts of damage and shit like that, which was one of my favorite scenes from the original Ghostbusters movie, when they come to that hotel in the ballroom and they're just fucking blasting chandeliers and shit. And they're out in the lobby, all the people in the maitre d' or whatever, and all you hear is crash bang boom. And oh, fantastic. Ghostbusters is amazing, one of the best movies ever. Anyways, back on track. The third of these 3 episodes that I really liked, oh shit, now I forget what happens. Oh, I forget. It's called I'll Be Back, but I forget what happens. It sounds like a Terminator thing, but it's not ringing a bell. I can't remember what happens, but I remember I loved it. So yeah, so 6 episodes plus the 7 of my first disc. I've only got 13 episodes from the show, but at least I got a taste of it, because I could see kind of where they were going with the show, the different look, the new voices, you know, just to get a sense of this latest Nickelodeon production. I don't know where they're going to go next with the Turtles. It sounds like this show didn't hit very well with people. I don't know. I find they changed too many things, you know. The Turtles are all different sizes and have all this weird different, each guy has weird different contraptions and novelties, and April O'Neil does not look like April O'Neil. There's no Irma, there's no Vern. Like, I understand that they're not going to just redo the original TV show as is, but like, April O'Neil's just a high school student who's kind of a dork, whereas the original April was like a grown ass adult working at a TV show as a reporter, right? There's just too many changes, and I think that's why I don't quite like it as much as the other stuff. I found as the Turtles series has gone along over time, not that they're bad, but the quality is going like this, and it's nothing to do with the animation and the writing and stuff like that. It's just they're not doing it quite right. You know what I mean? So it would be nice to see them get back to some sort of formula that works in the future if they do continue to go on with it. But either way, no matter what, I'm glad to have gotten a taste of this newest version of the Turtles. Next up, a movie. Finally watched The Flash. So The Flash was from 2023, this movie, and in it starts off with like the Flash helping Batman and Wonder Woman and I can't remember who else, if there was anybody else, but you know, thwart a robbery or something like that in Gotham or whatever. And afterwards, Barry, the Flash, goes back to like his childhood home and kind of relives some memories there. And the memory he relives is the day his mother died. So I guess when he was a younger kid, him and his mom were in the kitchen. She was making food and stuff like that, and she sent Barry's dad out to get a can of tomatoes or something like that, because she'd forgotten to get as many as she needed at the grocery store. And so he went to the store, and I can't remember what Barry was doing at the time, but as Barry's dad was out at the store, an intruder must have come in and knifed his mom, and she died, and that was kind of a big trauma, right? And so reliving these memories, this trauma, Eventually he starts running, and he ends up running so fast he creates this kind of vortex of uh, speed that ends up being kind of like, I don't know if it's time traveling or if it's alternate universes or whatever it is, but he ends up um, going forward in time, or to a, yeah, I must have gone forward in time because he meets his or no, maybe it's just a parallel universe. I don't know. I don't understand all the time travel multiverse shit. It ties my head in knots. But anyways, he goes to this alternate reality where his mom's still alive, and he meets himself in this reality who never got powers, and he ends up talking to his twin self from this timeline, and somehow the powers end up getting passed to the other Barry, and who's kind of a goof and whatever, and and they end up having a bit of a time together, and they talk about everything that's going on. Soon enough, they find out on the news that General Zod is invading Earth and plans to do, of course, what Zod does, which is pillage and destroy and enslave. So like the Flash is like, oh God, we need to do something about this. Like, where's the Justice League? And Barry's like, what do you mean? Like Batman? Oh, Aquaman never existed. Cyborg never got his powers. Wonder Woman can't find her. Right? So Superman, nobody knows where the hell he is. And so Barry's like, oh God, like, you don't know where any of these people are? I guess Batman's our last hope. So they go to Wayne Manor, and it seems deserted. But eventually in the kitchen, they get accosted by an aged, long-haired Batman played by Michael Keaton. That's right, the OG Batman, the best Batman. Don't give me any shit. Michael Keaton's the shit. And Batman, he's just living this weird kind of life in Wayne Manor. He's been retired for years. He's no longer Batman, and so then they end up explaining everything to Bruce Wayne, and he's like, "Sorry, boys, can't help you." But so they kind of take things into their own hands, and they go down to the Batcave, and they try to make a plan on how they're gonna repel Zod. So they're like, "Well, we got to find Superman," but Superman's nowhere to be found. So they eventually get this Kryptonian signature from some sort of prison in Siberia or some shit. Batman ends up coming around. He wants to help them. So they all go there. They free who they think is Superman, but it's not Superman. It's Superman's, is it his sister or his cousin, Kara, Jor-El or whatever. So Supergirl. And she's got some issues with humans because they've imprisoned her and whatever. But after seeing Barry's how he selflessly rescued her without even knowing who she is, what she's all about, she kind of has, okay, maybe all humans aren't so bad. Maybe I'm just dealing with the pricks, whatever, right? So she ends up helping them. And so the movie kind of ends in this battle. I forget where it takes place, but it's just kind of out in the open desert where Supergirl, the two Flashes, and the other Flash, the original Flash, is able to do it, some sort of him and Batman and the other Barry do this experiment, how he originally got his powers, and they get him his powers back. So both Flashes now have powers, and so Batman's in his Batwing, and they're all trying to repel Zod and whatever. But no matter what happens, Batman dies, Kara dies, and the Barry from this alternate timeline can't deal with the fact that people are dying, and he keeps kind of doing a speed run and going back in time, and this is how we'll do the battle this time, and blah blah blah. But no matter what happens, no matter what they do, everybody always ends up dying. So eventually our original Barry, who wanted a part of this time travel alternate universe thing because he wanted his mom back, eventually kind of learns that you can't fuck with time, you can't fuck with the dimensions. My mom died, this shit happens, I've just got to move on and deal with it. And and he tries to convince alternate timeline Barry of the same thing. So there's this big kind of dramatic ending and whatever. And yeah, it's just I really enjoyed this movie. I know DC has been really hit or miss with their movies. I enjoyed Aquaman, I enjoyed The Flash. I haven't seen the Suicide Squad thing yet. But I know they've had a lot of mixed reviews. But I thought this movie was really good. I thought the story was good. The messaging behind it was good. I like how they brought Michael Keaton back. I like how they had Supergirl instead of Superman to mix things up a bit. And yeah, I just thought it was a really solid story, and it was well done, well written. Actors were great. Effects, of course, are always awesome. Um, the the one thing I, I I didn't like about it, and I can't say that I hated this about it, but like I said, the whole time travel multiverse thing I think is played out. I understand that it was kind of this way to explore all these different ideas and have all these different scenarios and whatever. And it was fun for a bit, but I think they relied, both Marvel and, well, Marvel more so than DC. Um, I think they relied on this whole multiverse aspect a little too much, and it's kind of played out. And I wish they'd just go back to just regular old reality, and I'm saying that as I'm talking about a superhero movie, regular old reality, right? But yeah, I just think that whole aspect has been played out. But I'm going to forgive the Flash movie for it because DC hasn't done it nearly as much as Marvel, right? So either way, though, really enjoyed the movie. Would watch another Flash movie if it came along. And yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Next up, a couple weekends ago, I think it was, me and my buddy Simon that I play video games with and his older brother Josh, we got together and we went to the movies. We'd like to go see some big movies together. And the big movie this time around was Dune 2. So in Dune 2, all the chaos of the first movie is kind of out of the way. The Atreides family was killed off, or Paul's dad was anyways, and all of their associates, whatever, the house was killed off. But Paul and his mother still forge ahead, and they're in the desert with the Fremen, whatever they're called, and they're trying to adjust to this new life and figure out what the hell they're going to do. Paul Stilgar, one of the higher ups in the Freeman, has believed the prophecy has come true that Paul and his mother are the saviors of the Freeman, and they need to make him their ultimate ruler. I forget what it's called, and they soon determine that Paul's mother is going to be the new Reverend Mother, who is this mystical figure that has all the memories of the women, the Reverend Mothers that came before them, and have these magical powers and whatever. And so Paul, in the meantime, doesn't want this mantle of leadership, which impresses, I forget how you say her name, Chani, I don't know, who ends up becoming kind of his love interest, one of the Freeman girls. And she appreciates the fact that he speaks up and says, I don't want to rule you. I just want to fight alongside you and avenge my family's loss and free Arcanus and help you get your freedom and whatever. So she respects that. And as time moves along, though, his kind of mythology keeps building and growing. There's so many of the Freemen that think he's their next leader, the guy that's going to save them. And then there's this other sect of them that think he's an imposter, and they think he's a joke. And it's like, what the fuck are they talking about? So they're very skeptical of him. In the meantime, his mother does become the Reverend Mother. The current one is on her deathbed, and she drinks the tear of the well or something like that, some special water, and she uses her Bene Gesserit magical training to survive the ordeal and gains all those memories. And because she's pregnant, this effect also has on her, the daughter that's growing inside her. She can now telepathically kind of commune with her inside of her stomach. And meantime, so she starts pushing Paul to fulfill this prophecy and become the leader, and he keeps pushing her off and getting pissed off because he keeps seeing these kind of visions of himself. If he becomes the leader of the Freemen, he will leave carnage in his wake, and not just carnage of the Harkonnens, who are their enemies, but everybody he loves and holds dear in the Freemen. Like, everybody's going to die, sort of thing. So that's one of the main reasons why he doesn't believe he's supposed to be the leader, but he also keeps having these visions, which just reinforce that I don't want this, right? Eventually, as things move along, manipulations keep coming. Um, he starts really training in the ways of the Freeman, and he learns all their ways. And the biggest victory he has is the sandworms that they ride. He ends up finally going on a mission to um, stand out there with his little tongs and his little beater to attract the sandworm. It comes, he successfully rides it and latches on and rides it, and it's like the biggest sandworm they've seen in years. So, you know, once all the dust settles and they see him riding across the desert on this massive worm, everybody's like, oh fuck, it is him, ah! And then eventually his mother kind of manipulates him to drink this special water, which is supposed to be deadly to men, all men, and those untrained in the whatever the magic is that the women use. So he ends up surviving the ordeal, which again only furthers to strengthen his standing. And the good side benefit, though, is that in drinking this water, it has made his visions that he was so skeptical of and afraid of more clear, and he has more of a clear purpose. In the meantime, the Harkonnens, the Emperor, is monitoring what's going on Arcanus, and I forget the name of the guy that's the governor or whatever on the planet, the big tubby bald guy that floats with the balloons. It's fucking nuts. He is getting pissed off that the Freemen kept making these strikes on their spice miner machines, and they're seeming to just making fools of the Harkonnens. And so I forget the character's name, but it's Batista, the former wrestler and the guy that plays Drax in Guardians. He's the one who's kind of leading the charge for the Harkonnens. So this governor guy gets pissed off and he says, you're off the case, Bobrovsky. We're gonna bring in Fade Routha, this kind of savage skinny guy, and he ends up taking charge, and he has some success. His savagery helps the Harkonnens gain a bit of a foothold, and eventually the movie kind of culminates in this big battle, and the Emperor is down on the planet and whatever, but the Freemen fight so hard and get to the Emperor, and Paul faces off with the Emperor and basically says, you're done here, I'm gonna kill you, whatever. But they end up having a duel, and so the Emperor says, well, I'm gonna have somebody fight for me, and he has Fade Routha fight for him and Paul. It's a big fight. Paul gets injured, but he eventually gets the better of Fade Routha, and the Freeman and Paul win the day. And I can't remember if they killed the Emperor or not. They killed the bald balloon floaty guy, but I can't remember if they killed the Emperor or not. But anyways, the Freeman and Paul have won. And I read the Dune book, and it was a long book, and there was so much jumping with timeline and how much time had gone by. You felt like you were kind of in a different story sometimes. And but I don't remember the story well enough to remember what happens. And so we just assumed Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2. We thought Dune Part 2 was the end of the story. And it ends on an even bigger cliffhanger than the first movie. So it looks like there's going to be more Dune coming. And not that that's a bad thing. That's great. But yeah, just as the movie ends, like they defeat the Emperor and all his guys, the Harkonnens. But all the different houses that are allied with the Harkonnens or whatever, they're all sending ships to attack the planet and whatever. So it's like there's an even bigger shitstorm coming as this movie kind of signs off. So great movie. These movies are so distinct. It's the landscapes, it's the weird tech they wear and everything and use. It's the fact that you have these big expanses of land and things can be so quiet 1 second, and then the next you've got these big ships or in these big fucking spice harvesters that are so loud and so big and so violent. It's just all these different contrasts and stuff like that, and it's just it's a movie you got to see on the big screen. It's that kind of production, and yeah, it is almost a 3-hour movie, and I was like, guys, we didn't go till 7 o'clock, so it almost got out at 10. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay awake, right? Like, I'm old. I get up at 5 in the morning for work every day. Like, but I made it. There's a couple like where I closed my eyes for like maybe 10 seconds, and I thought, oh shit, oh, I'm back. Have more Fruitopia, right? Um, but yeah, I made it through the whole movie, and it was excellent. So can't wait for, I assume, what's going to be part 3, right? Last thing, a video game. Oh, and the other thing I didn't mention was one of the trailers before Dune Part 2 was the next Mad Max movie, Furiosa, the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. I'm not even going to say anything. Watch it. Go on the computer or your phone or whatever right now and watch it. It's going to be fucking awesome. I don't know if it's going to be as good as Fury Road, because Fury Road was outstanding, but it looks like it has all the potential to be as good or better from what we saw. And yeah, we all saw that movie together when it first came out, Fury Road, and we're definitely going to be going to see Furiosa. So just a little plug there for Mad Max. If you haven't seen Mad Max, any of the movies, oh my god. How many are there in the original? There's 3. There's Mad Max, there's Road Warriors, and then there's Thunderdome. And then, of course, there's the newest one, Fury Road, and then this Furiosa that's going to come out after. Awesome movies. Oh, my God. Anyways, we'll talk about Mad Max once I go watch Mad Max. Last up is a video game. One I downloaded on the PS5 after playing a game more recently from the same series. The game in question is River City Girls 0. River City Girls 0 is actually a prequel to the River City Girls game, which we played on the Nintendo Switch not that long ago. You've probably seen my gameplay footage possibly of the River City Girls 0 game over the last few weeks or a month or whatever. I just beat it, I think, earlier this week. It serves as a prequel to River City Girls. Unfortunately, because I had River City Girls on the Switch, I couldn't post any gameplay footage. But basically, River City Girls, the game, followed these 2 girls, Misako and Kyoko, as they set out to try and find their boyfriends who had gone missing or whatever. And it's just a side-scrolling beat-em-up kind of game, and that sort of thing. So River City Girls 0 was a prequel to that. It was basically the River City Girls' first adventure together. And so in it, it's actually an older game that they've kind of spruced up with some newer stuff. So and it wasn't called River City Girls 0. It was called something else because it was only ever released in Japan as some sort of Super Famicom thing. And from on the Super Nintendo, I think 1994, I think they said it was originally released. So this is the first time this game has ever been out in North America. So what they did was they had the OG game, but then before and after it, they had kind of this these comic book cutscenes for Misako and Kyoko as they talk about their first adventure together and whatever, and then you get into the game, and it's an old looking 16-bit side-scrolling beat 'em up. In this game, you mostly don't control the girls, though. You control their boyfriends, Ricky and Kunio, and the story focuses on Kunio. So basically, I think they're high school students or whatever, and Kunio and Ricky get arrested and sent to a juvenile detention facility because there's a hit and run on a motorcycle, and the guy on the bike looks just like Kunio, and I think Ricky's also on the back with him. But they're like, we didn't do anything, like we're innocent. So they go to this facility, and they're kind of sitting there in jail or whatever. And one of their friends, I forget his name, comes to visit them in jail and gives them all these tidings of, oh, there was a hit and run, and it was said that the guy on the bike looked just like you, blah blah blah. So they feel like they're being set up by somebody, like with a look-alike sort of thing, to get them in jail. So they make the decision to escape jail and then set out after whoever is responsible for framing them and getting them locked away. And as you move along, like you go to all these it's not really linear in terms of like level 1, level 2. It's just kind of all over the place. Like sometimes a level can be like one room long. Sometimes it can be three or four, and sometimes there's a boss, sometimes there's not. So it's a little different kind of game that way. And there's a lot of like on-screen text, like there's a lot of talking in the game, which you can't skip through, which made me really fucking angry. But anyways, I still love the game. And so as you go along, you eventually run into Misako and Kyoko at different times, and they get added to your party. So at one point in the game, you have all four characters available. So if you're fighting a boss and your one character gets really low on health, you can just L2, boom, I got the next person in line, and then you have their full health bar to use up, and then you can do that with all four people, right? So, but you don't have the girls at the start of the game, and you lose them at the end of the game too. So, which was it was kind of a neat feature. I kind of like that. It was interesting, and yeah. So then you just play through to find out who the hell set you up and what their deal was, and yeah, deal with the bidness. You know what I'm talking about. So I really enjoyed the game. It was short, but it was also difficult in many aspects. There's some really tough boss fights, but fortunately, there was a save feature where you can save it at any point in the game. So like some of the harder bosses, like I was like, okay, I made one hit on the boss, save, resume, right? Because some of them were that hard, right? And they'd give one hit and you'd be down half your power bar, right? So some might consider that cheating, but y'all can fuck off. So yeah, beat the game. It was lots of fun. And one of my favorite parts of this River Cities Girl franchise is the music. Like the song that starts this game is fucking awesome. It sounds like an old band called, Joan Jett was in the Runaways. It sounds a lot like that band. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it sounds like that. It's a really cool song, and I always like when that game comes on. I'm always like, fucking, fucking what? And yeah, there's lots of things to love about that game, all but the difficulty level. Anyways, that's everything for now. I've already got one or two things really close to falling for the next round, so hopefully I shouldn't be so long between posts. Although I don't remember when my last one was. I feel like it wasn't that long ago. But anyways, regardless, I'll be back. Meow.